Horrifying. Here are 6 presidents of the United States who survived assassination attempts. Is there a more stressful job than being the President of the United States? Between the enormous responsibility, the constant media attention, and the relentless workload, isn't being president extremely difficult? However, there is one major challenge, and that is the threat of assassination attempts. Tragically, several famous U.S. presidents have lost their lives in such attacks. In addition, many have come close to death. Indeed, we never know who a president's greatest enemy is. A president himself never knows who and where someone who hates him could make an assassination attempt. Luckily, some of these U.S. presidents escaped horrific assassination attempts. 1. President Andrew Jackson, 1835. In the early 19th century, a U.S. president never received a serious threat from one of his constituents. However, that all changed in 1835, when a painter named Richard Lawrence tried to shoot President Andrew Jackson at a congressional funeral, as history notes. Lawrence was wrong, Jackson's life was saved. For this incident, Jackson, who was very angry, immediately beat Lawrence with his cane. When he tried to shoot again, Lawrence failed again. Then, before Lawrence could shoot for the 3rd time, he was immediately dropped and secured by the president's aides. When things calmed down, this incident still lingered in Andrew Jackson's mind. He also suspected that Lawrence was ordered by his political rival. This suspicion is quite reasonable considering Jackson's controversial actions at the time. 2. Abraham Lincoln, 1861. Abraham Lincoln's assassination at Ford's Theater at the end of the Civil War is one of the most tragic moments in United States history. However, the Smithsonian shows that the president nicknamed the Great Emancipator had experienced previous assassination attempts. In 1860, the election of an abolitionist to the White House turned out to be a major controversy that caused tension between the northern and southern states. President-elect Abraham Lincoln was scheduled to become president in early 1861. After excusing himself from his home state of Illinois, Abraham Lincoln took a train to Washington, with a scheduled stop in Baltimore. However, in Baltimore, a man named Cipriano Ferrandini and one of his associates planned to assassinate him. Fortunately, the terrorist plan was uncovered by police detective Allan Pinkerton, who warned the Lincoln family about the assassination attempt. Abraham Lincoln insisted on stopping in Baltimore, but his wife convinced him not to. Finally, the Lincoln family hid in Washington's Willard Hotel until Abraham Lincoln was finally inaugurated on March 4. 3. William Taft, 1909. William Howard Taft is not a famous president in American history. You must have just heard of him, right? However, Taft was the first U.S. president to meet with the Mexican president, a former general named Porfirio Diaz. Given the not-so-pleasant history between the two countries, this meeting was quite a threat. Charles H. Harris and Lewis R. Sadler's The Secret War reveals that in El Paso, Texas, their meeting was accompanied by a parade of 2,000 U.S. Army soldiers and more than 2,000 Mexican soldiers. During this event, a man holding a pistol broke through the crowd and tried to kill the two presidents. The gunman was taken down before he could carry out his action, but he managed to get within a few meters of his target. 4. Theodore, Teddy, Roosevelt, 1912. Theodore, Teddy, Roosevelt successfully completed his 2 terms in 1909. He ran for a 3rd term in 1912 and campaigned in Milwaukee. However, not everyone agreed with his decision. As Roosevelt stood in front of the crowd, a barkeeper named John Flaming Schrank fired a bullet into Roosevelt's heart. Madly, the speeding bullet struck the bundle of Teddy's speech papers that he had stuffed into his breast pocket, along with his glasses case. The bullet did hit and lodge in Teddy's chest, but the speech paper and glasses case slowed down the bullet's momentum so that the shot was less fatal. Surprisingly, Roosevelt still delivered his speech, as if nothing had happened despite the bullet hitting his chest. He even took the blood-stained papers out of his pocket, held them up in front of the crowd, and said, "You know, it takes more than one bullet to kill a bull moose." After the speech was over, Teddy was rushed to the hospital. Schrank himself spent the rest of his life in a mental institution. 5. Herbert Hoover, 1928. From the outset, Herbert Hoover's election as president was extremely risky, especially from assassination attempts. In November 1928, Hoover embarked on a friendship tour of Latin America to spread a message of peace to the people of the southern region. However, not everyone was pleased with his presence. A man named Severino di Giovanni and his allies felt that the president-elect's visit was the perfect opportunity to take revenge against the United States. As Hoover was about to board a train from Chile to Argentina, Di Giovanni planted explosives on the railroad tracks. However, the plot was discovered and all the perpetrators were arrested before another assassination attempt could be made. Quoted by the Time in 1928, Hoover himself was not too bothered by the commotion. 6. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 1933. In 1933, in Miami, the newly elected president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, was giving a speech in front of 25,000 people, as quoted by the Miami Herald. However, there was an unemployed man named Giuseppe Zangara who tried to shoot the president with a gun he had just bought for $8, IDR 127,000. Zangara claimed to have no problem with FDR, but he hated all officials and rich people. Zangara shouted, "Too many people are starving." After that he fired 6 bullets at the president-elect. The bullets missed FDR, but they hit 5 other people, including Chicago Mayor Tony Cermak, who died from his wounds. The crowd quickly knocked Zangara down and wanted to judge him violently. However, a visibly calm FDR calmed them down and let the authorities deal with the shooter. FDR then devoted his presidency to ending the Great Depression.